Hi guys, we'll be looking at what inheritance is. We're looking at inheritance today. So, what is inheritance? So, before we go into what we really have for today, I would like us to first create a file, another file, name it inheritance, and let's do the normal setup before we start looking at what inheritance is. SPDS license identifier, correct identifier, then MIT, then Solidity version, Pragma, Solidity version 0.8.0, semicolon, then contracts, and now let's now talk about what inheritance is. So now, what do we understand by inheritance? What is inheritance? So now we all in the physical world, like now normal day to day activity as a human, we know human will die, parent die, and one way or the other, they tend to pass down the property to one of the children or to some of the children. So, and the process of passing down this property to some of the children is what we regard to as what as inheritance. So, inheriting. So, they are basically inheriting this property now. Same thing too comes with solidity. In solidity, a contract can inherit from another contract. So now, when we say a contract is inheriting from other contract, that is a contract that is inheriting from a contract that is inheriting from another contract with inherit all its functions, all its variables, all whatever that is inside the contract. The contract that is inheriting from that contract we inherit from it. Contracts and the contract that we are inheriting from, they are basically regarded to as period contract, while the contract that is inheriting from that contract is what we regard to as what as child contract. So now, why inheritance? Why do we have inheritance in solidity? So imagine we are previously we created a contract that enables us to store student information, retrieve student information, and a culture that aims to retrieve student information, store student information, delete student information. So now, imagine the case whereby we want to implement another contract that is similar to this student database contract. They are having their structure is alike. So imagine the case where we just want to implement this kind of contract. So the difference between the new contract we want to create might just be just one update function. So that is the difference between the new contract and the other contract to just be one function. So now we have two options of creating this contract. Is we can either copy all the code, all the logic in this contract, then paste it in the new contract and all that. So imagine when we have thousands of lines of code, millions of lines, thousands of lines of code, and we copy it down to this new contract we are creating. It is actually not efficient. So that is one case in which inheritance is useful. So now another case in which inheritance tends to be useful is, okay, imagine we are having this this retrieve student information function that we have here in our student record contract. So now what we are basically returning, we are returning an object that contain all the information that is relating to a specific student. Imagine the case where the only student information we just want to be returned is the age of the student. So now those are the cases where we just create another contract, create the same function, then we are able to what? We are now able to just modify that function so that it will just return just only the student age. Now let's now look at the two instance of creating contract. So now let's look at it now. So we've created our inheritance file and we've done the setup. So now let's now create our contract. let's just give it a random name. Let's say inherit or inheritor. Um, sorry, I'm kind of bad at picking name. Inheritor, inheritor or something like that. So now, how do we now perform this inheritor action in Solidity? So Solidity now give us a special keyword in which immediately Solidity see that keyword, it automatically knows that okay, this contract wants to inherit wants to inherit from that contract. So immediately Solidity see the keyword, then Solidity will then do the work of passing all the functions, all the variables that are in the contract we are inheriting from. We then do the work of passing it to the newly contract which we created, which is inheritor. So now we talk about the is keyword. So now to now inherit from this. So now what we want to do now is to inherit from this student database contract. So now the first thing we need to do is first import the contract we want to inherit from. So we import the contract we want to inherit from, so that so immediately the import keyword make we then make this contract, we make this student record contract accessible in our inheritance contract. So first you import your contract. So how do you import? Then you so then import, then what is the name of the contract you want to import? Student record, student record dot what dot sol, then put your semicolon. So now after we've been able to successfully import the keyword, the next thing to do now is to tell Solidity that we want to inherit from this student record contract. Then to do that, uncomment this contract statement, then the is keyword. So as I said, this is keyword is not just an ordinary is, it is a special keyword in Solidity that tells Solidity that a contract want to inherit from an other contract. And as I said, once Solidity see that this contract is inheriting, then Solidity then do the work of passing down all the functions and variable that are present in the contract you want to inherit from down to this inheritor contract we just created. So now we've import the contract, we've written the is keyword. Then now what is the name of the contract we want to inherit from? It is student database contract. Then you copy the student database contract, you come down to this inheritance file that we just created. Automatically automatically we've been able to inherit from the student database contract. That is now all the functions and all the variables that are present in this student database contract are now accessible in this inheritance contract. So now the way we can see it now is Solidity automatically put all these functions, all these variables inside this inheritance contract in the background. That is, we cannot, although we cannot see the contract physically, but the contract are there, let's say virtual, like the contract are already existing there, though we cannot see it. So let's just understand inheritance this way. So now this is basically how inheritance work. Now let's save our contract and let's deploy it. Let's deploy our contract now. Let's deploy our contract. So now you can see I've selected the contract we want to deploy, then click on deploy. Now you can see, we can now access all the functions that are present in the student database contract in this inheritance contract. So let me delete this again and let me deploy the student let me deploy this student database contract and compare what we have in this inheritor contract to what we have in the student database contract. So now let me deploy this. Now you see what do we have here. So currently this is our student database contract, that is the parent contract that we inherit from. You can see our delete student, our retrieve student, our store student function. Same thing too comes with this inheritor contract that is inheriting from the student database contract. You have the delete student contract, the retrieve student contract, the store student contract. So Basically, this is how inheritance work. It is actually very simple and it is not that difficult. So now, the next topic we'll be looking at overreading and virtual. So now, Solidity also give us two important keywords to also enable us to inherit from a parent contract effectively. And those two keywords are known as what? As virtual. Those two keywords are virtual and virtual and override. So now, imagine a case whereby, okay, we want to inherit from a specific contract, but now all we just want to do is we want to modify one of the function so that we can achieve a particular goal. We don't like the formal implementation. We don't like the way in which the formal function was implemented, but we just want to modify one of the function that the parent contract has. So that is why Solidity give us these two keywords: the virtual and the override, enable us to what? Enable us to achieve that. So now, imagine we want to just modify one of the function. So now, when we go to our student record contract, you will realize that we have retrieve student information function here. So imagine we just want to like modify this function to just give us like the age. Just so let's say the student information we are just interested in is currently the age of the student, or we just want to, so you just currently the age of the student. Then all normally what we actually try to do is write another function having the same name, then passing whatever argument we are passing in our student retrieve student info contract here. We copy the argument, then paste it and public, then returns. Now, returns. So I really want you to pay close attention to this return section here. As we said when a contract inherit from other contract, it will definitely inherit all the variables, all the structs that are present in the parent contract. Now you realize that in this student record contract, what you are basically returning, we are returning we are returning a struct. We are returning a struct here which is named student info. So now let's copy this struct, and this struct now was declared inside this student record contract, but it was not declared inside this inheritor contract that is inheriting from this student database contract. You realize that when I put this struct, then the memory location, everything works. So now when I put this struct, okay, actually before we get to that, let's keep that for later. So now, this retrieve student info function is present in this parent contract we are inheriting from. So one thing Solidity does is, if a specific function is present in the parent contract and we now want to declare another fresh new and I now want to declare another function inside a contract that is inheriting from a base contract. So now Solidity will automatically throw an error telling us that we've already declared this type of function that is having this name in the parent contract. So Solidity will prevent us from declaring a function that is having the same name with another so Solidity will prevent us from declaring another function having the same name with another function that is in this parent contract that is also having the same name with this. That is Solidity. So Solidity, so now the reason why we are not Solidity is showing this warning here is that is because this retrieve student info function already exists in this student database contract. So that is why Solidity will prevent us from declaring this function again, because it is already existing in our parent contract. So now, how do we now do it? And our sole aim of recreating this function is just to for us to be able to what? achieve a specific goal, we want to change the way in which this student info function works. So now tell Solidity that this function will be overriding this retrieve student info function will be overriding the retrieve student info function that is present in this parent contract, which is student database contract. So the keyword that enables us to tell Solidity is what? Is the override. So the override keyword automatically tells Solidity that this function will be overriding a this function will be overriding this retrieve student info function will be overriding the retrieve student info function that is present in the parent contract. Now it's still throwing an error. So now to now tell Solidity, so now since we've tell Solidity that this function will be overriding, then we now need to another operation in the parent contract by informing Solidity that this specific function is we now need to tell Solidity that this retrieve student info function is eligible for overriding. So now to now tell Solidity to that this specific function is eligible for overriding, we achieve that with the help of the what? We achieve that with the help of the virtual keyword. So automatically we are able to tell Solidity that this retrieve student info function is eligible for overriding. Then once you realize that now our code compile here without showing an error. Now so what I was talking about previously now is that okay, now you realize that we are using a variable here, a variable which is student info. This variable is not declared within this our inheritor contract, and yet Solidity is still not throwing an error. So as I said, whenever a contract is inheriting from a parent contract, all the variable will be automatically present in the contract that is inheriting from that parent contract. So now you will realize that this student info contract was declared just in this parent contract. So which is this is it at the top here. So now this student info contract will automatically be present in our contract. Then we can now start writing our logic. We can now start writing whichever logic or can now start writing whichever modification we want to do in this our retrieve student we can now start writing whichever modification we want to do to this retrieve um um student info function. We can now start writing our logic that does the motivation. So now we've been able to actually look at a lot of things. We've looked at how to create a factory contract, we've created a contract, we've deployed a contract, and we've talked about inheritance. Now we've talked about overriding. So now this is where we are going to end the lecture for today. Have a nice day.